Nuclear war did not destroy humanity. It destroyed their world. Cities disappeared in minutes. Communications were shut down. No one recorded what came next. Only ruins and incomplete testimonies remained. 3 centuries later, humanity is still alive, but fragmented. Small, isolated groups, without a common map, without a shared past. This is not the story of how it all ended. It is the story of what remained. Subscribe for more History of the Future. There was no warning. Major cities were hit and collapsed within minutes. Urban areas disappeared before most people understood what was happening. Explosions destroyed political, technological, and logistical centers. The electromagnetic pulse shut down what remained. Electricity ceased to exist. Without power, the modern world came to an immediate halt. Communications, transportation, water supply, hospitals, everything was rendered useless. Then came the fire. Storms consumed oxygen and reduced entire structures to unstable debris. Then came the cold. Soot rose into the atmosphere, blocked sunlight, and ushered in a nuclear winter that lasted for years. Crops died. Clean water disappeared. Diseases returned with no possible treatment. Most did not survive the initial impact. There was no rescue. There was no immediate reorganization. Only collapse. And in the midst of that collapse, a few managed not to disappear. Survival was not a merit. It was a statistic. The cities collapsed immediately. Those who were there had no choice. Destruction, lack of water, and radiation eliminated almost any possibility of continuity. But there were people who were not on the surface at that moment. Some were in government bunkers or private shelters. They did not survive because of moral preparation or skill. They survived because they had resources, power, or access to facilities built decades earlier. Planning benefited them, but it did not make them immune. Others survived for the opposite reason. They had nothing to protect. They lived far from strategic targets. Rural areas, islands, remote regions. Places where the war did not directly reach and where distance became the main factor of life. Many shelters failed to fulfill their function. Filtration systems failed. Supplies ran out. Isolation produced internal tensions that were never resolved. Dozens of closed facilities became airtight tombs. Those who managed to remain underground for generations were exceptions. not the norm. Outside, survival was also unstable. Nuclear winter, lack of medicine, and the collapse of supply chains further reduced the scattered population. Over time, this unintentional selection created two distinct lineages. Those who survived by confinement and those who survived by exposure. 300 years later, both groups are still alive, but their origins no longer resemble each other. "300 years later, the planet was no longer a world. It was divided into fragments. Humanity did not reorganize itself. It dispersed into small, isolated, self-sufficient communities. There are no nations or borders, only habitable areas, avoided areas, and distances that almost no one crosses. The old cities were left as ruins, unstable structures, irregular radiation, and degraded materials. They are sites, not settlements. The objects of the previous world no longer serve their purpose. A telephone is a mirror. A car is a source of low-grade steel, the most valuable metal of this time. A building is a resource or a risk. Current technology is basic. Improvised mills, manual water filtration, handmade tools. Knowledge is transmitted without records. Each community is organized according to its origin. Those that left shelters maintain strict rules. Those in the open are mobile and flexible. Contact is minimal. It occurs out of necessity and always involves risk, disease, disputes, or simple mistrust. 300 years later, humanity is not a unit. It is a collection of groups that learn to survive without rebuilding anything. Radiation did not create impossible creatures. It created differences. The first generations paid the initial price: disease, malformations, organ failure, and lives cut short. Without medicine or resources, most did not survive that period. Over time, only the bodies capable of resisting remained. The selection was not intentional. It was basic survival. In the most exposed areas, clear adaptations emerged. More resistant immune systems, tolerance to contaminated environments, and visible changes in skin and metabolism. Living outdoors became possible only for those who inherited that resistance. In the shelters, the opposite happened. Entire generations grew up in controlled environments. Filtered air, purified water, absence of common microorganisms. Their bodies became dependent on these conditions. Upon leaving, many could not withstand the light, air, or external bacteria. Thus, two lineages emerged: the adapted and the preserved. The differences are not only physical. The adapted view the outside world as their natural environment. The preserved interpret it as a constant threat. Contact between the two groups is limited. Illnesses that are mild for some are lethal for others. Neither community takes that risk often. 300 years later, humanity is still human, but it no longer responds to a common destiny, but to two conflicting biologies. While humanity retreated, the rest of the planet continued to advance. The disappearance of millions of people immediately altered the balance. Some species could not withstand the change. They were too dependent on urban environments or human activity. They disappeared within a few generations. Others did the opposite. They occupied the abandoned spaces and adapted to new conditions. Irregular radiation, unstable temperatures, and the absence of human presence. In the old urban centers, ecosystems emerged that were unlike anything previously recorded. Fauna living among steel, degraded concrete, and technological debris. Animals that never had direct contact with humans, but moved among their structures. The radiation did not create monsters. It created biological pressure. Some species developed tolerances that were previously impossible. Others became smaller, more resistant, or more aggressive in order to survive in contaminated environments. Outside the cities, nature occupied the space unopposed. Forests spread over sunken infrastructure. Rivers reclaimed their ancient courses. Territories where vegetation grew without limits or planning. Humans who venture into these places observe before acting, not to study, to avoid making mistakes. 300 years later, the planet did not return to its previous state. It simply adopted another. "300 years later, the ancient great cities still stand, but they are uninhabited. They are empty structures riddled with radiation, instability, and degraded materials. For decades, they were deadly zones. Today, they remain dangerous. The radiation has not disappeared. It has dispersed in irregular patterns. Some areas are safe for a limited time. Others cause organ failure in a matter of minutes. That is why no one settles there. There is no interest in rebuilding them. The cities have become forbidden territories, avoided for the sake of memory and survival. Not only because of what they emit, but because of what they represent. The center of collapse. Even so, they are not completely empty. There are groups that never managed to leave or decided to stay inside. They are descendants of those who were trapped or who entered in search of irreplaceable resources. They live in conditions unknown to most. Some have adapted. Others simply could not leave the place. There are no censuses. There is no contact. There are no reliable records of their numbers or conditions. Forbidden cities are not explored. They are surrounded. They are marked on incomplete maps. They are mentioned as a warning. 300 years later, they remain the most visible reminder of what happens when too much life depends on a single point on the planet. Over time, some communities stopped limiting themselves to survival. They consolidated. They controlled stable water supplies, fertile land, routes free of radiation, resources that others did not have. That control generated influence, then dependence, and finally power. At first, it was not imposed by force. It was imposed by necessity. Those who wanted access had to accept conditions, foreign rules, permanent presence. The strongest communities began to expand, not by occupying territories, but by absorbing the weakest. Some accepted, others disappeared. The descendants of refugees tried to reproduce ancient structures. Records, hierarchies, health and population control. Those who adapted responded with mobility and rapid attacks. Strength was no longer just physical. It was control of resources. Information, the ability to isolate others. 300 years later, the world was reorganized, not into nations, but into domains. And each domain believes it has the right to decide who lives within it.